Just the stats. Reggie Johnson, Eugene Morgan coming to you from the lovely city of Atlanta, Georgia, and Eugene. The Super Bowl is upon us here. Pretty exciting. What's interesting is being that it's going to be the Chiefs and the 49ers. It's interesting that it was the Chiefs and 49ers not too long ago, right? Like
Right.
you go through these cycles, and the Chiefs, like we were in a Patriots cycle for a while. Then there was a cycle where there was either a Manning or a or Brady in one or in a Super Bowl, someplace or another for a long time. Now it seems like we're in the Mahomes era, where Mahomes has been in the Super Bowl last 3-4 years or so, or 4 out of the 5 years, somewhere in there.
4 out of the 5 years. Yep.
So what's interesting is the Chiefs at the last line that I was looking at, and of course that line might have moved because the Vegas lines are moving all the time. They were 2.5-point dogs, and that's interesting to see the Chiefs go in as an underdog. And one of the things I was thinking was, man, I really wish that we had sports betting in Georgia so I could bet that game. Like you can bet player props in Georgia, like in fantasy, like DraftKings and stuff like that. But you can't bet on like teams like the Chiefs or bet the 49ers. Personally, I just can't bet against Mahomes, man.
No.
I can't bet against Mahomes. I don't know I think that when you look at the amount of players on each team, of course, the 49ers are just decked out, man, right? That's a freaking all-star team, man. They have several players that would be excellent players on the other teams, So I think that when you look at the teams top to bottom, maybe I get the line. Maybe I get why the Chiefs would be underdogs. But I think the Chiefs were dogs going to Buffalo. I think they were dogs going to Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're dogs again going to the Super Bowl out there, I should say, in Las Vegas. Beautiful city, by the way. Out there in Las Vegas. I am going to take the Chiefs here. I'm not really a big score guy, so I can't ever be like, 27-24. I don't know how those guys do that. But I'm going to take the Chiefs, but it's for a very simple reason. And in this particular case, wouldn't surprise me if the 49ers win because of what I just told you. When you look up and down the team, they have so many great players. I can name 5 players and then forget some. Let's name 5 off the top of our head. McCaffrey. Let's go Trent Williams.
Yep.
And who should probably be the number 1 player because if you look at how many games they lose with Trent not playing versus how many games they win when he is playing, it's significantly different. So let's go and then not do these in any order. So back to McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Debo. We have Fred Warner. We have Nick Bosa. That's 5 right there. Haven't even got the Chase Young. Right?
Chase Young and
haven't talked on even Debo or Purdy. I don't know if I've got the Debo or Purdy there.
You said Debo, but you forgot.
Okay,
you
got
what about Ayuk? Brandon Ayuk is not.
Ayuk and Ayuk would be a number 1 option, and you can kind of argue that he is their number 1 option because Debo is more of their number 1, like I guess number 2 football player because him and McCaffrey are both just excellent football players. So whether you're handing it off or tossing it to these guys, they can get you there. So when you juxtapose that with the Chiefs situation and where you have Chris Jones, of course, a record. And let's talk about this, man. That Chiefs defense, man.
Oh, my.
Ladies and gentlemen, that Chiefs defense this year, incredible. Spags has the guys out there flying around and playing. So I'm very happy to see that that's complementing the offense because the offense hasn't really been great. And this is a far away from, remember the first game, Eugene, where we were like, what's going on with the Chiefs, man? We don't think the Chiefs have it this year. Guys are dropping passes all over the place. And now here they're in the Super Bowl. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm right there with you. And I looked at the line. The line is like 1.5 now. So even Vegas isn't.
Oh, it's moving.
Yeah, so even Vegas is
man.
confident. It's almost. I'd be surprised if when we got to the game, be like a pick 'em at that point.
Pick 'em once a week because think about it. That's like if it's 1.5 now, it was 2.5 like 2 at the time of this recording 2 to 3 days ago. So that means we've moved about a point in a couple of days. That means the money came in on the other side of that to kind of push that line down. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and you saw last week. How Detroit was able to move on that defense, right? This is supposed to be like the top defense with the 49ers. And I'm with you. I just can't I can't bet against Mahomes anymore. Until someone proves me wrong, it's like the whole basketball theory. Until someone beats Golden State, Steph Curry, they're the number one team. I feel the same thing about Chiefs. Yeah, the Chiefs have not looked good, but man, they just dominated. Like they beat one of the top offenses in Miami, and they were shut out against Baltimore, right? That second half, but it didn't matter. It didn't. They just all they did was eat up clock and turn it back over to defense. Like, okay, here you go. If you can score on us, great. If not, we're gonna just keep running the ball and keep running clock, and we'll see what you can do until you do something you can prove that you can beat us. And that's what I kind of feel with the Chiefs. Like they do just enough now to win. And let's just face it, they got the best quarterback in the league. So
right. Isn't that incredible, man? It's just hard to beat 15, man. I'm telling you, it's not easy. Kelsey found the freaking fountain of youth here down the end of the season, because Kelsey wasn't looking like Kelsey at certain points during the season. Because it's funny because when Kelsey's on, he's on, right? When he's off, he just looks older. Yeah. Right. He looks like he's aged a million years when he's off. But then all those years come off when he's on. Right. It's like he's back out there again, catching passes, man. How do you think the 49ers stop a guy like that, man? And you would think, and this is something I text you during the game, and this is before the game even got all the way into the game. I remember texting you and telling you, Kelsey is always freaking open, man.
Yeah.
He's always open, man. And then that zone, Mahomes just eating it apart. Eating it apart, finding the holes. Because I think what's the difference between Mahomes and a lot of quarterbacks, especially when dealing with the zone, is a lot of great quarterbacks, and Tom Brady was like this too. They aren't afraid of the check down. They will take that 5-yard completion.
Right.
They will take that 6-yard completion and hope that something can happen with it, but they'll take it. And a lot of your strong arm quarterbacks, when you deal with I think we saw a little bit from this with Lamar, but definitely with the Josh Allens of the world. They're throwing that thing out the stadium, man. Throwing that thing out the stadium because they have the arm to do it. They have the talent to do it, right? They have the talent to get it there.
Yeah.
So it's home run shots all the time. Your better quarterbacks are just going to take what the defense gives them and just move it up the field in smaller chunks. But you're still moving the ball. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no. And you and I were texting that during the Baltimore game, right? It was like, Lamar, just hit the guy that's right there open.
Right. Hit the underneath. Right.
Hit the underneath. It's 4 yards. It's 5 yards. And then and that's the crazy part too, is like one thing is like Patrick doesn't run a lot, right? He doesn't, but that's the thing. If he starts to run, he freezes those linebackers. You could see that. And that's and there was that one crazy pass that he did to
where he was falling down.
Yeah. And he's like, he had to jump and almost fall down, and he still completes the pass because he frees the linebackers up just enough so Kelsey's open, and he makes just a fantastic catch. And so, yeah, I know the 49ers have that superior defense, but they just know how to. I can't again. Until Kyle can prove and get that monkey off his back. Reed's got a
chance to.
He does.
Right? He's got a chance.
You got the roster,
to, man, and he's got the roster to do it.
Yeah,
that's why I wouldn't be surprised me if he wins. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. No, but again, how many times have we seen again? And go back to your point about the Patriots. How many times have a team that gone against the Patriots had a better roster, and Brady picked them apart exactly the seg. And how many times? Yeah. They don't have the better roster, but you know what they did? They spent the money on the offensive line. And, the offensive line is not the best this year. It's been better in the past, but they do just enough to win. And I think that's what they're going to do in the Super Bowl.
You know what? Another wild card factor I'm going to put in there is number 10, man, Pacheco. Pacheco's a wild card. If he gets going, because I remember his first couple of carries, he had like 10 yards. And he had first downs. When you saw the Chiefs come out and they were running the ball, they were imposing their will. They were getting first downs, 10-yard chunks in that first half, and then Baltimore kind of settled down in the second half, just played the Baltimore defense that we thought. Shout out to Mike McDonald there, getting that job in Seattle. Great coordinator, what he was doing, had those guys flying around. What would be interesting, and I do like the storyline of the 49ers right now. I don't mind I don't really have a rooting interest in this game. I'm not really heavily vested. It's just that I just don't bet against Mahomes ever.
No,
never put money up against the guy.
No.
So I'm not going to do it now until a team actually beats him. It's just hard to do because then I'm going to feel stupid. for going back on my rule. Let's move on here to Belichick, Vrabel, and Pete Carroll with no jobs. Man, what year? We got to go back to what, 2000? 99? 2000 since none of these guys were coaching?
These guys had a joke. Yeah, it's been a while.
Now, what are your thoughts there on the Belichick situation? We've talked about this on previous shows, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again because it's going to be talked about, I'd imagine, for the next year. Because what's going to happen is, you best believe, when this guy's on a couch or if he's sitting on somebody's set discussing football, as soon as things get hairy for any team, there's going to be about 6-7 jobs available next year. Because I think there's about 6 or 7 on average available every single year. And there will be some next year. And you know who the top candidate's going to be for almost all those jobs. It's going to be Belichick out the gate. Because people, once you get away from the game, remember John Gruden? John Gruden got fired, went and sat on television and was the hottest commodity for like 5-6 years in every coaching race. Or I'm not sure how long he was on TV, but he was the hottest commodity when coaching jobs became available. Are they going to get Gruden? Or are they going to get Gruden? They're going to call Gruden. I think the same thing is going to happen with Belichick and Vrabel too. Listen, Tennessee moved on for Vrabel. I think that was a mistake, in my opinion. And only reason I think that's a mistake is I think it's harder to get better coaches than Mike Vrabel. And I think that he did a decent job of what he had to work with. The GM, he's not the one who sent away A.J. Brown.
Nope.
The GM sent A.J. Brown away. So I think that they didn't really have a good receiving core there. It'd be interesting to see kind of what that team does with Will Levis, if they get some more receivers in there, if they kind of try to build around the kid. I'm not really sure if they're convinced on that or not, but that'll be interesting to see what they do there. What are your thoughts then on the Belichick situation? And I'll go after that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn because you were right. The age has to come into the factor. It has to be factored in, and also has to factor in what did he want when he was here? Did he want to be the GM position as well? Did he want to? Because that would be my only pushback. Because he hasn't been able to do that. He got away with being a bad GM because he had the best quarterback in the world, right? He had Tom Brady, so you can miss a lot. It's kind of like the Chiefs. They can miss on draft picks because they have Mahomes. It's not going to. It's kind of like the same thing with the Niners. The Niners have so much talent. Like they're not getting roasted by the Trey Lance thing because they're going to the Super Bowl and they have so much talent.
You trade, you're in the Super Bowl. So
you trade exactly.
Not a bad situation.
You lost all these first rounders, but you're going to the Super Bowl. So you have the trade off there. But Belichick, his teams have not. They've been mediocre, and you're right. And I don't know. I've heard some rumblings that he did not want Mac Jones. It's like he didn't draft him, but so that's my only pushback. And plus, he is in his 70s, and we do see the league going younger as for coaching wise. And I mean, I know we're going to talk about the Raheem Morris coaching, but I wasn't mad about it. And again, I wasn't mad about not getting Harbaugh because I know Harbaugh wanted a QB. I'm not really that broken up about Belichick. I know he has the 6 Super Bowls, and maybe we'll look dumb in a year and we'll go 1-1.
I think a few teams are personally.
Yeah. But that's my only that'd be only hesitation. Was he wanting to be in that full control mode? Or could he, because let's face it, that team performed the last couple of years with him. That defense was amazing, especially last year. Like they were holding teams under 20 points a game, which is hard to do in a league where they want teams to score. But that defense was great. And they lost one of their top line guys and their top cornerback. So, and they still was a legit holding teams under 20 points a game.
Yeah. Anything for Vrabel and Carroll before I go on my Belichick rant?
Vrabel, I was really shocked. I thought from what he's done, just from, what personnel.
He was coach of the year not too long ago, man.
Right. That's a kiss of death, I think, for any league. If you get that, it's like you're
coach of the year out of here within a year.
You're probably on the blacklist to get fired. Yeah. Vrabel, I'm very shocked because they've given him like fewer and fewer things to work with, and he's produced just competitive. The teams are competitive. Let's just face it. Like, yeah, if you look at the record, yes, we're not the best, but when you watch them play, like last year when they played the Chiefs, that probably had to be one of the best games I watched that they lost. They had Malik Willis out there playing, and they almost beat Mahomes. It's like and Carroll might be under that same. But one thing I do like about Carroll, he does have that offensive mind, right? And he does have like, okay, I know what it takes to win on the offensive side, and I know what I'm not good at. I know I'm not good at defense, so I need to bring in the better coordinator on that side. So, but again, is it the age thing? He's also in his 70s.
He's 72.
Right.
Yeah, he's 72. Let's get Belichick's age.
And he's 71.
Belichick. Yeah, because I think Carroll was the oldest in the league, is what I want to say. 71. Yeah. So 71 and 72.
Yeah.
71 and 72.
Now, in my front office, I would hire those two guys in a second. I would love those as an advisory, right? I mean, but I don't know. With just where the league is going, I get some of the hires. Vrabel, I don't understand at all. I don't understand why Tennessee let him go, and I don't understand why he's not one of the top candidates. He will be next year. Like, he'll be one of the guys. Like, because like you said, 6 or 7 jobs are going to be available. People are knocking down his door next year.
I totally agree with that. I think Carroll might be going to the Seahawks front office. I want to say that's from what I heard, and we'll see how that works out. But so he's not necessarily leaving the building in Seattle. Mike Vrabel, I'm surprised. I'm surprised about that. Maybe that was a situation because it came so late in the coaching search, because that came later than a lot of people were already conducting interviews and stuff like that. So that came later. The Belichick situation is shocking to me only because I get it. He's 71. So I see this both ways, and then I'm going to have this same take when we kind of go over what happened in Atlanta with the coaching search. Because I try to look at situations from not just my perspective. I try to look at both sides of situations that kind of present it to the audience, and they can kind of make their decision. So with Belichick, I see this 2 different ways. So if GM Belichick would not get hired anywhere, in my opinion, because his drafts are horrible. He's not shown any competence, seems like a bad word, but he hasn't shown any ability to bring in great players with a large sample size of drafts. You know what I mean? You can go back and find, it's going to be hard pressed to find great players that he drafted, great first rounders that he drafted. When he's holding that GM role. So if Bill Belichick comes into your team, says, hey, I want to run the team, it's an automatic no. But I've heard, listening to some of these insiders, whether it's Florio or King or Schefter or whatever, that he wasn't necessarily asking for that. But here's the problem. And I think this is the same problem that Cam Newton had being on the Patriots when he was on the Patriots. If you bring in people like that have resumes, that are decorated individuals, they kind of run it by default. Like, they don't really run it, but they kind of run it, if you know what I mean. Because you're going to come in, the specter of Bill Belichick, he's a coach. If he says, hey, I want this guy, and then you got your young GM who's saying, hey, I want that guy, and the specter of Belichick is there, then I think that it has a psychological effect. And I think that was the same thing. We had this conversation when Cam was in New England. We were like, it's going to be hard for Mac Jones to take over that locker room with Cam sitting there, man, because we all know the team. We all remember 2015 Cam. We romanticize that, right? We're thinking, hey, we want Cam out there every incompletion, right? Every incompletion. Let's get Cam out here. Let's get Cam out here. So you got to, in order to give the locker room to a younger person, you're going to have to take that old legendary veteran out of the picture. Unfortunately, it's kind of like they're a victim of their own success to a certain degree. You know what I mean? So that's one side of it. And I would get why you would not want Belichick for that. The other side of the situation, and why I don't like the age stuff, is a lot of these young guys be losing too. Like, I don't understand this. Like these young guys are winning. Let's look at the age of some of these guys who got fired. They're not in their 70s. You know what I mean? We just talked about Vrabel. Vrabel's not in his 70s, right? Look at all the coaches. Our coach just got fired. Dan Quinn, when he got fired, when he was here. All these guys aren't in the 70s. They all got fired, right? They all got fired. So when I'm looking at just the results, because I love sports for this reason. I love sports because we could sit here and talk about the games. We could sit here and interpret stats and stuff like that, because stats only tell part of the pictures, even though I do love stats. They only tell a part of the picture. Stats don't tell the full picture. Eventually, you got to go out there and play the game. and then you get to see what actually happened. So I have a hard time discounting his wins, because I know that there's only 3 human beings that have ever got to 300 wins, right? Only 3 human beings have ever crossed that threshold. Whether I think it's Halas, Shula, and Bill Belichick, right? Those 3 human beings. Now, for some reason, maybe it's because it's the most modern reason, Belichick is the only one that gets knocked for his wins for having Tom Brady. Like Shula didn't have Dan Marino. Like Halas didn't have Sid Luckman and coached for like 40 years. You know what I mean? Like, are we not looking at that? All these guys had Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And if you don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback, you don't have 300 wins.
Correct.
And so it's interesting that Bill Belichick gets that knock, right? Like, oh, well, he played with Tom Brady, as if your other Hall of Fame coaches played with bums. Like Dan Marino was just a nobody, right? When he got all those wins with Shula. So I think that's an unfortunate knock. I do. And not to mention too, he did have a winning season just 2 years ago, guys. He had 2021, he won 10 games.
He did win 10 games.
Like he hasn't won since Brady was there. He won 10 games with Mac Jones just 2 years ago. So I do get it. And in his time, when Brady was coming on, for people who were old enough to remember, Bledsoe already had them on a Super Bowl trajectory when Brady was there. They were already on a Super Bowl trajectory with Bledsoe. When New England went and got Bill Belichick, they had to compensate the Browns. I want to say, I don't know if it was the Browns or Jets. I forgot where he went straight from
the Browns
to New England. They had to give draft compensation for him. And New England gave up draft compensation to get him. I'm not sure if that was compensatory. I'm not sure if that came from the league or if they came from New England. But I remember there being a significant push. New England really wanted Belichick on their team. You don't want a bum on your team, right? If Brady wasn't there, then Brady wasn't even drafted. So you don't want you're not going to go after some bum. So clearly, I don't like the knock on coaches when they coach great players, because what comes first, the chicken or the egg there? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You're only a great coach if you had great players. But are you a great coach only because you had great players? What is your thoughts on that?
And don't forget too, and you can put some asterisks by Brady's name, right, for those first 3 quarters of Super Bowls, because those were defensive heavily wins by those teams, right? And
those defensive teams were amazing, and his defense was pretty good all the way up to now. Like he's a defense guy, right? DC, he's a defensive coordinator. And the knock on by the way, too, the knock on defensive coaches, with all these defensive coaches getting jobs, there's people in the media who are knock defense. You need a young McVay, you need an offensive mind, a guy in his 30s, blah, 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 blah. Now you look at the hiring circle, you look at DeMeco, coach of the year, right? Come on, stop it, man. Like these defensive coaches, they're not bums. They're not bums. Maybe you have to lean into an offensive coordinator that's competent. I get that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's good. And that's probably where Belichick's has, Josh McDaniels was let's face it, he's not a good coach, like a head coach, but he's a good offensive coordinator. And so you can tell that's where it's been lacking since he's left. But yeah, no, that's a great point. But DeMeco again hired a great offensive coordinator. He has a great offensive coordinator. Same thing with Detroit, right?
An amazing draft too, by the way.
Amazing draft.
Detroit has some great drafts as well. Both of those, those GMs have done great jobs with both those teams.
Yeah. They just again, I'm not mad at the Falcons for not hiring Belichick, but I'll be mad if this just goes south really quick. If
what is really quick? Let's segue into our Falcons and sure. to put a bow on the Belichick situation.
Right.
I do hope Belichick is in the job. I do think that he is unfairly demonized for having good players around him when other coaches have good players around him and don't have nowhere near the success he's had. So they'll have good players and they don't have 300 wins. They've had good players around them, better players. They might not have had Tom Brady. And I think that's what the problem is. People say, oh, well, you had the greatest quarterback, but greatest quarterback you have to be able to foster that. We've seen a lot of talent wasted in this league, and people get no credit for capitalizing on the talent, but will get the blame if they waste the talent. So I don't really like only under that. Belichick could never get credit for anything under that, right? Like if you give those kind of if you don't give him credit because he has a Hall of Fame quarterback, he could never get credit. He could only get blamed. Like you're setting up a situation where he could never benefit. It will only be negative, negative, negative. Meanwhile, you're still only one of only 3 human beings who's ever walked the earth with 300 games. So I feel like Coach Belichick should get another job. GM Belichick should not. And that's kind of where I'll end on that.
I think it's perfect.
Segue into the Falcons situation, because I was mad about the Belichick situation, only because of what you just said, though.
Mm-hmm.
Any team that passed on this, whether it's Belichick or these coaches that have had success, your coach better have success.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you decided to run with these other guys. These guys better come out here, because what you're going to look stupid for is not taking the obvious thing. You know what I mean? Because what it seems like too obvious, and then in your head, you think yourself out of obvious situations. It's not like, so the guy is 71 and people are saying, well, you want a guy you can keep here for 5-10 years. Average coaching career is 4.
Yeah.
Average coaching, these young coaches aren't staying around 5-10 years. They're getting fired after 3-4 years. Carolina, you might get fired after 1. So when you're looking at
one whole season,
that's right. That's even Frank Reich wishes he had 1. But when you're looking at situations like that, I don't know what people expect when they hire coaches. The average coaching career of any age is about 4 years. I don't think Bill's going to croak at 75. I mean, maybe people are living longer. I don't think if he's not right, if he's only coaching and he could turn things around, I'm all for Bill, because we saw this happen with Pat Riley in Miami, which I love, by the way. Miami to me is like the Heat are kind of like the Steelers. I love the Steelers, but I also love Miami for its stability. Right. What a stable organization that Riley has going down there, man. Right? There's certain things that you just know ain't gonna happen down there when you go to that team. So I feel like coaches like Belichick can establish that culture, if nothing else. They don't have to stay there for 3 or 4 years, but they can come in, establish a culture like Riley did. He coached for a year or 2, got up out of there. This is in the Spoelstra era. I think he came down and coached when LeBron got there and then got up out of there. So I feel like Belichick could easily do that for a team. 2 to 3 years, set a culture, change up out of there, right? Yep. Go be a GM or something. They'll run a team, take the Pat Riley path there. I think that's something that's viable. So I do think that was something that I was disappointed with. That being said, we have Raheem Morris here as our coach to a very polarized fan base here. So this has been a very polarizing hire here in Atlanta. And I get both sides of this once again, but I'm going to let you give your take on it before I kind of go into that.
Well, I want to piggyback, first of all, on the thing you said about culture, because when Nick Saban was hired I was listening to a podcast about this. When Nick Saban was hired at Alabama, that was the first thing he did. Like he went down the halls where they put the pictures of the guys drafted. They had all these old pictures of people drafted years ago. He's like, you need to take these down. You need to put the guys out that we have drafted now, that the kids grew up watching. They don't know so-and-so from the 50s, 60s.
Right.
So
putting Bear Bryant players.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, yes, you keep the Bear Bryant picture up, whatever, but
for sure. But he's the only one, right?
Right. But to your point, I think that's great. It's a great point is you can bring in as many coaches as you want in, but how do we change the culture? Because that's the thing we lack here in some of in our sports. Like the Braves figured it out, right? They figured it out in 91 or 90 after that first losing season. They changed their culture. Yes, we've had some losing seasons, but it doesn't last long, right? Same thing with the Bulldogs, with Georgia. Like, yes, we have some good coaches, but when they brought Kirby Smart in, it's a different thing. Like the Bulldogs and the Braves are always going to be talked in. They're always going to be in
expected to win.
Expected to win. We are always with the Hawks and with the Falcons are just going to be like, oh, well, maybe we'll figure it out. I mean, and this thing, it's not like we're lacking talent with either one of these rosters. Like we've got a talent roster with the Falcons. How do we change the culture? And is it Raheem? And gosh, that's a really tall ask. It is not only fix the team with a talent roster, but fix our culture, because we want to get back to where here's the thing, we've got a good owner now. We didn't have good ownership that wants to commit to winning, but again, to commit to winning, you got to look at the culture too. And you're right. I thought it would have been great if you would have had Belichick for those whatever, 4 or 5 years. And let's just say we were just a 500 team. Maybe we were like 10 in this, 10, but he changed the culture for the next guy coming in, right? So you have that
Very
winning
possible.
culture, right? So I'm not saying Raheem can't do it, but man, that's a tall ask.
Yeah, and given both sides of the situation, because you have the one side of Raheem loved by people in the league,
Yes.
highly recommended by individuals. People that play for them swear by him, right? Love to play for them. That's one thing. You got to have guys want to play for you.
Yeah.
Was here before. So maybe he knows something that's not really a super plus for me. But for some people, it is a plus. I'm gonna name what could be pluses for people who like the hire. Always good to see minority coaches get head coaching jobs, especially second chances. So that's always something I'm happy to see.
Yeah.
However, on the other side, for the fans that do not like this hire, I get where they are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? 24 and 31, 21 and 34, something like that. He has an underwater. He comes in underwater, under 500 with his coaching record. And it was here before.
Right.
And got let go for the guy that you just let go. To me, those combinations of things don't set the world on fire. When you say that this is the guy after 14 interviews, and then you circle back to a guy that was here before with a losing coaching record, people aren't going to be necessarily popping bottles in the streets like they are in freaking Los Angeles when they got Harbaugh. They're out there celebrating, man. You know what? One of the things I love to do, ladies and gents, because I'm a nerd, I do get on local channels to see what the local fan base, not necessarily channels, I'll go to YouTube channels and listen to what the local fan base, local podcasts for local teams. YouTube's a great place for this. You can go and get the fan reaction, get what their reaction is on whatever given situation. When Vrabel was fired, I wanted to hear what the Tennessee fans are thinking. When Arthur Smith, our coach, got hired in Pittsburgh, I wanted to see what the Pittsburgh Steelers fans are thinking. So then I'm going to listen to the Chargers fans and see what they're thinking. Man, they're out there crying like they won the Super Bowl, man. They are super excited because they got freaking Harbaugh. Now, Harbaugh was my first choice.
Yeah.
What hurt me the most about our hire, and it has nothing to do with Morris specifically, more so than the Harbaugh situation, is Adam Schefter reporting. So initially, I had the same thoughts as everybody else. Why would Harbaugh's not going to want to come here? He can kind of choose whatever job he wants. We don't have our situation going out. Chargers, I think, is a good job. It's a good job on paper. They got good skilled players there. They're in a position to draft another. I hear they might take the kid Bowers out of Georgia. That'd be excellent. Imagine him with Herbert, right? He's a great player. So they're in a great position. So I'm thinking I had left it out of my mind. It's kind of like that girl that you didn't think you had a chance with. And then you talk to her friend later. And her friend says, yeah, man, she was waiting for you to ask her. Then you're like, man, like that I missed my opportunity. So when Schefter reported that the Chargers did not want to let Harbaugh out of the building to go to that second Falcons interview because they felt he was going to take the job. That's what Schefter said. This is not me reporting. When I'm watching Adam Schefter say this, I'm looking at the screen like, you got to be kidding me. You mean to tell me that if we had taken the same approach that the Chargers took and just never let this man out of the building after his first interview, instead of like, well, let's call in our other 12 guys here, we would have had the same opportunities that they had? I don't like that, man. I feel like we could have had Harbaugh because Adam Schefter said we could have had Harbaugh. I don't think the Chargers would have upped their offer. Like, let's say that Harbaugh is going to visit the Panthers or something like that, and the Panthers wasn't a really highly sought out job. I think the Chargers hold tight at their offer. I think they hold tight. Like, hey, we're just gonna sit back and wait for. We'll see you in about a week, bro. We're already gonna have the press conference set up. We're ready for you to come back. But they got scared for a reason. They were like, oh man, this could happen from what Schefter's saying. So I do feel like we missed an opportunity on that. But it is what it is. We're here now. Hope springs eternal. I'm really hoping Morris does turn it around in a sense of, like I said, the under 500 coaching record is something that has to change. But one of the problems with that is if a guy who has a losing situation comes in and loses with your team, who do you blame? Who do you blame,
Yeah.
Eugene? Who do you blame? Like
I
if you
mean,
look at his record and say, hey, he was underwater when he got here.
right.
How would
It's
you
like,
handle that?
right. I would be upset, right? If you're a fan base and that happens again, you're going to be upset and you're going to question. And then it just keeps us behind the 8 ball again. And then we're doing this process again when again, I just hope it wasn't the obvious choice was right there, either Belichick or Harbaugh. And we went for this pick because the thing I think we kept hearing after the fact was they weren't like the executives were scared to hire Belichick because
I
of the
don't
way
like that because I feel like
I don't like that either.
self-preservation to me. It feels like
Right.
self-preservation.
Right.
You have people in your ear who have skin in the game. Get people in your ear who aren't scared of losing their job to Belichick, aren't scared of the change that might come. Because I've seen companies do this where you have execs that might be in a founder's ear, and then they're in self-preservation mode, so they're not giving the best advice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not the best advice for the team. So I feel like when I heard that, 'cause I heard the same thing too. I'm not sure how true it is, but we definitely both heard the same thing.
They're the same
There's
thing.
maybe some
And it's
execs
I
that didn't
yeah,
want
and
him.
I've read it on Twitter, I've read it on Instagram because I like you, I follow a bunch of different people just to see to get different perspectives. And that echoed pretty loudly on different people saying the same thing about that. So yeah,
But you know what
I
that
hope
means? He has to win.
he
He has
does.
to win. And he's not going to get a long time to do it. I feel like it's like a person with bad credit, right? If you come into a place with bad credit, they might extend credit to you. But the minute that payment is late, that 1 minute that payment is late,
Yes.
they're on you a lot harder than they are on the 700-800 score person, right? They're not on that. They're not pressing that person as hard as they're pressing you because you came in with an issue in this area already. So then people are going to say, oh, well, maybe this is just more of the same with this guy. And so what I'm thinking is that Raheem Morris, hopefully he's able to come in, change the culture.
Yep.
I do like Zach Robinson. He had hired Zach Robinson. Does Zach
He
Robinson
does.
hire?
He
The only
has
reason I
made
like
some
the
good
Zach
hires.
Robinson hire because he's a lot of other people wanted him. I don't really can't when other people want a guy, I tend to think he's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact he goes, listen, I know what I'm not good at. I can do the defense, but I need someone to do the offense. I respect somebody who does that right away. I don't think Arthur Smith was doing that with the Falcons because he's obviously doing all the play calling. And you could tell that's why I think our offense was just, incomplete most days, right? We'd have good days, we had bad days. I think he was trying to overextend himself. But I like the fact that Raheem was like, you know what? I'm going to bring in a guy that I work with, I trust. And it's not an overreach. It's not like going, oh, I'm going to hire a guy who's never coached offense before or worked with the offense system. And let's just face it, at least the positive things is he was under McVay, right? For all these years.
Yeah.
The McVay tree has been pretty good. It's been pretty solid.
It has been.
Couple years.
Okay.
So that would be, I get people why they're upset, but if for the hire and look at the record, but at least he went back. He's won a Super Bowl
He could have learned, and it could be different.
He could be different, and that's maybe he's more poised this time being head coach, but only time will tell. But you're right, the leash is going to be short.
The last thing I would say on that to kind of just bring that full circle is, as much as we have strong feelings, because I had strong feelings about Arthur Smith getting hired in Pittsburgh. We'll do another episode because I don't have enough time to rant about that. One of the things that I don't ever do is get married to my own arguments. I date my perspectives, but I don't marry them, if that makes sense, because this is sports. And sometimes we get so vested in one side of an argument that we don't believe the other side is even possible.
Right.
And it is possible. Raheem Morris could come in here and we could win 10, 11, 12 games. Like that is an absolute possibility. Like let's not act like it's not. I just feel like when you had more obvious answers there, and we'll go one day, we'll keep rehashing our Trae Young, Luka talk over and over and over again. but it's a lot of things I feel like go back. A lot of things in sports, I think, go back to that mind state, the smartest person in the room mind state, where you
Oh
just
God.
outthink the most obvious answer. And the most obvious
Right.
answer when the draft is there, Lamar Jackson being drafted 32nd. That was out. These people were thinking too much. You were thinking too much. The guy had already won a Heisman. He looked incredible.
Mm-hmm.
You overthought the situation. You should have
Right.
drafted him.
Yep.
You should have drafted him, right? So that's what I hope we're not doing. And then we just left hundreds of wins on the bench here from a coaching perspective for at least a reason.
Right.
A reason. And that's what a lot of these young guys that got hired, whether it's the guy in Carolina, the guy in Tennessee, a lot of these guys that got hired, man, you guys better win. You guys better win because you got some Titans there sitting on the sidelines. Let's give a couple minutes here to the Trae Young situation, and then we'll get out of here. And I'm only going to do this because we're both wearing our Hawk shirts today, man. I really felt like we needed to at least give something because we're going to talk more. We're going to talk more as we get into basketball season. When football season's over, we'll kind of really get into our basketball conversations a little bit more. The Trae Young snub, it's hard to call it a snub. It's hard to call it a snub only because the fans voted him. I think the fans would have had him in over Lillard. Barely. The fans had he beat Lillard in the fan vote, but the players and coaches had Lillard over him. And I'm gonna go back as you see with the Doc Rivers situation, where Doc Rivers is getting a coaching nod for the All-Star game, having coached 3 games and lost 2 of those games. You see, fans are crazy. Like you see how we'll vote a name in. They'll vote in a guy that's retired. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go with the players and coaches because they know more than us, right? They know. I mean, they're watching these guys up. There's nothing better than the respect of your colleagues, man. People who do the same thing that you do because they know how good you really are at it, right? We're all looking at it on screen. We're seeing it on 17 days out of a year. We're going to watch it and make our judgments. But they're seeing these guys in practice. They're seeing how they prepare. They're seeing them a lot larger sample size of how good this player really is. And that's not even counting their own knowledge of the game themselves, right? So they're seeing things differently than a lot of fans. So I'm going to have to ride with the players and coaches on this. I think the first 2, Halliburton, Brunson's the only maybe. Brunson was the only maybe because I feel like Halliburton's a given. He's just beasting, man. Yeah. Oh my God. So Halliburton's a given. Lillard, I think, is going to be a given too, even with recent struggles. I heard he's going through some family issues, a divorce, and that stuff like that. So that's kind of weighing. These are human beings. It's going to kind of weigh on your performance. But it was funny too because when I looked at what he's averaging, they were like, he's only averaging 26 points this year, and I'm just like, God, wow. Like, but yeah, I guess that's a bum now. But he's I'll take Lillard. The Brunson situation, I feel like I would have to give the nod to Brunson only because they are 3rd or 4th in the East. And then the Hawks were 10th in the East. Easy, right? If that was a tiebreaker, if you had them like neck and neck and that's a tiebreaker,
right?
Easy. And you know how I feel about Brunson, man. I'm not in love with Brunson, but I do feel like the Knicks, the Mavs should have paid him. And when we talked about this on the show, when it first happened, the Mavs should have paid the guy. And now he's out there beasting in New York. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Well, and it's like remember, like, was it last year? The players announced voting were not happy with him,
they put Trae 12th last year, by the way,
right?
Which was insanity. Instead, some of the guys that had ahead of Trae last year was insane. And I'm not just being a homer here. Some of those names were crazy because I would never take those names over Trae if you were to kind of do a one-on-one situation,
Yeah. I mean, let's just face it. He's not been one of the most popular players in just NBA period, right? He's got 2 coaches fired. So right there, that's going to be a knock against if the coaches are responsible for the reserves, it's going to be tough for you to get into that All-Star team. And listen, the talent is, we're never going to deny the talent. He is an all-star. He's all-star capable.
I think he has all-star talent for sure.
He does have all-star talent, but it's like, but people don't want to play with him. Him and John Collins got it, and John Collins is gone, right? He's got into with 2 coaches. 2 coaches are gone. So it just doesn't seem to have any self-preservation sometimes. And listen, He's been fun to watch. He's been amazing, but this is another case that we have a talented roster, we have a good coach, and we're a below 500 team, and and there's no answer to why.
It's frustrating, right? It's frustrating, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at another time. This is Just a Stats. Reggie Johnson, Eugene Morton. Check us out. Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts, as well as check us out on Instagram and TikTok. And I will, Eugene. I'm going to start putting these back on YouTube, man. I'm cranking it back up, man. You know what's crazy is that we were doing the YouTube uploads, and when I started to get views in other places, I like moved the house. Like I could still have both houses, right? I could still put them on everywhere, right? But when we started to get more views on TikTok and stuff like that, I moved my house to TikTok, and I'm like, this is where I moved to totally. But I can have an apartment on YouTube, and we will definitely put some more stuff on there. Probably as I would do, we're gonna do some more Mount Rushmore episodes, and then I'm gonna do like a playlist. It's gonna be very, very nice, and we'll do that and probably build that up here at some point. Thank you, ladies and gents, for listening or watching wherever you are. See you next time.